You're sitting in your living room, maybe reading the paper or watching TV, and something crosses your mind. Am I actually doing okay for my age? Or am I just telling myself that? I thought about this a lot when I was still working. I'd see people come through the hospital, and some of them at 75 were vibrant, active, sharp, and others at the same age were struggling with things that seemed, I don't know, they seemed fundamental. My name is Linda Harrison. I worked as a registered nurse for 32 years, most of that in a cardiac and geriatric unit in a mid-sized hospital outside Cleveland. I retired 4 years ago, but I still think about the patterns I saw. The things that separated people who were genuinely healthy from people who just seemed okay until they weren't. And I learned something that surprised me. You don't need expensive tests or a doctor's appointment to know how you're really doing. There are 5 simple things you can check yourself, right now, in your own home. And they'll tell you more about your actual health status than you might expect. I'd appreciate if you'd subscribe before we continue. What I'm sharing isn't theory. It's what I watched play out thousands of times during my career. The difference between staying independent and losing it often came down to catching problems early. These 5 tests help you do exactly that. So let's talk about the first one. Can you hold a conversation while you're walking around your house? Not sitting. Not standing in one place. Actually walking from room to room while you're talking. I know that sounds almost too simple to matter, but stay with me here. I had a patient. Her name was Ruth. She came in with what she thought was a lung problem. She kept getting winded. Couldn't finish sentences without stopping to breathe. She assumed it was pneumonia or maybe asthma developing late in life. We ran tests. Her lungs were fine, completely clear. The problem was her heart. Her cardiovascular system wasn't moving oxygen efficiently anymore. And the very first sign, the earliest warning that something was declining, was that she couldn't talk and walk at the same time. Your body needs oxygen for everything. When you walk, your muscles demand more of it. When you talk, your vocal cords and breathing patterns require coordination and air. Doing both simultaneously puts real demand on your cardiovascular system. If that system is working well, talking while walking feels effortless. You don't even think about it. But when it starts to decline, you have to choose. Either walk or talk, but not both comfortably. Research shows that conversational dyspnea, that's the medical term for getting breathless during conversation, it predicts cardiovascular decline more accurately than a lot of the standard tests we run. Ruth and I worked together for months. Cardiac rehab, gentle exercise progression, some medication adjustments. 6 months later, she could walk and chat without any trouble. Her body had been trying to tell her something for a while. She just hadn't realized what the signal meant. Tomorrow, try this. Call a friend or family member. Put them on speaker. Walk around your house while you talk to them. Around the kitchen, down the hallway, wherever. Pay attention to your breathing. If you can speak in full sentences, maintain your pace, keep your breathing steady, that's a good sign. Your cardiovascular system is still functioning well. If you find yourself pausing mid-sentence to catch your breath, or if you slow down so you can keep talking, or if you feel like you need to choose between moving and speaking, that's information worth having. It doesn't mean something terrible is happening, but it means your heart and lungs might need some support. The second thing to check is how long it takes you to recover after climbing stairs, not whether you can climb them. Most people over 70 can manage stairs if they go slowly. What matters is what happens after you reach the top. Do you feel fine within 30 seconds? Or are you still breathing hard 2 minutes later? I worked with a man named Donald. He was 73. He came in after a minor surgical procedure, and during recovery I was monitoring his vitals. He mentioned, almost casually, that stairs had been bothering him lately. I asked what he meant. He said he could still climb them, no problem. But afterwards he'd feel winded for several minutes. Sometimes his heart would pound. He'd need to sit down. That recovery time, that's what tells the real story. When you're younger or when your cardiovascular system is healthy, your heart rate and breathing return to baseline quickly after exertion. Within 30 to 60 seconds, you feel normal again. But when your heart isn't pumping as efficiently, or when your lungs aren't exchanging oxygen as well, recovery takes longer. Your body needs more time to clear the oxygen debt you created by climbing those stairs. Studies on cardiac health show that prolonged recovery time after mild exertion is one of the earliest indicators of declining cardiovascular function. It shows up long before you'd notice problems during rest or normal activities. Donald ended up needing some medication adjustments and a structured exercise program. Nothing dramatic. But within a few months, he could climb stairs and feel recovered within a minute. His heart had gotten stronger, more efficient. This week, if you have stairs in your house or in your building, try this. Climb one flight at a normal pace. Not racing, just normal. When you get to the top, look at a clock or your watch. How long until your breathing returns to normal? How long until your heart stops pounding? If it's less than a minute, you're doing well. If it's 2, 3, 5 minutes, your cardiovascular system is working harder than it should for that level of activity. That's worth mentioning to your doctor. Now, the third test is about something most people don't think about until there's a problem. Your ability to sense temperature accurately. Fill 2 bowls with water. One comfortably warm, like bath water. One cool, like refrigerator temperature, but not ice cold. Close your eyes and put your hands in them, one in each bowl. Can you immediately tell which is which? Does the warm one feel distinctly warm and the cool one distinctly cool? Or is there a delay before you can tell? Or worse, do they feel kind of similar? I learned about this from a woman named Margaret. She came into the ER with a burn on her hand. Not severe, but concerning. She'd run hot water over her hand for what she said was just a few seconds. When we examined the burn, it was consistent with much longer exposure. I asked her about it gently. Had she not felt the heat? She got quiet. Then she admitted something. She'd noticed over the past year that temperature didn't feel the same anymore. Hot water didn't feel hot right away. Cold weather didn't register until she'd been outside for a while. This happens because the nerve endings in your skin that detect temperature start to degrade after 70. They don't send signals as quickly or as clearly as they used to. And this matters more than you might think. Temperature sensation protects you. It keeps you from getting burned, from getting frostbite, from sitting in water that's too hot, from going outside underdressed in cold weather. When that protective mechanism weakens, you're vulnerable to injuries that younger people would automatically avoid. Beyond safety, though, temperature sensing problems can indicate peripheral neuropathy. That's nerve damage that often accompanies diabetes, vitamin deficiencies, or circulation problems. Catching it early means you can address the underlying cause before it progresses. Margaret's temperature sensing issue led us to discover she had undiagnosed diabetes. Her blood sugar had been high for probably 2 years, slowly damaging her peripheral nerves. We got her on medication, managed her diabetes, and some of her temperature sensation actually improved. Try the bowl test I mentioned. If your temperature sensing seems off, if warm and cool feel less distinct than they should, that's worth investigating. It might be nothing, but it might be an early sign of something treatable. The fourth thing to check is whether you can stand up from a regular chair 5 times in a row without using your hands. Not just once. 5 times, one after another, at a normal pace. Cross your arms over your chest so you're not tempted to use them. Sit in a normal dining chair or kitchen chair. Stand up. Sit down. Stand up. Sit down. Do that 5 times. Can you complete all 5 without pausing, without struggling, without needing to use your hands? I cannot tell you how many times I saw this pattern. Someone comes into the hospital for something unrelated. A minor infection, a small procedure, whatever. They seem fine, but when we do a basic physical assessment, They can't do the chair test. They can stand up once, maybe twice, but by the third or fourth repetition, their legs are shaking. They need to push off with their hands, or they can't do it at all. And that tells us something critical. Their leg strength is below the threshold needed for independent living. Standing from a chair requires significant quadriceps strength, core stability, and balance. When you can do it 5 times in a row, it means those systems are still working well. When you can't, it means muscle loss has progressed to a point where basic functional tasks are becoming difficult. There's research out of the University of Southern California. They tracked thousands of older adults for years. The ones who could complete the 5-repetition chair stand test had dramatically lower rates of falls, hospitalization, and loss of independence. It's not that the test itself protects you, it's that the test reveals whether you still have the fundamental strength needed for daily life. I worked with a woman named Judith. She was 76, living alone, managing fine as far as she knew. During a routine appointment, I asked her to do the chair test. She completed 2 repetitions and then just stopped. Her legs couldn't do another one. Judith was shocked. She thought she was doing okay. She didn't feel weak. But that test revealed the truth. Her muscle mass had declined to a dangerous level. We started her on a strength training program, nothing extreme, just basic exercises. Within 3 months, she could complete all 5 repetitions easily. That intervention probably added years to her independence. Because once you lose the ability to stand from a chair reliably, everything else gets harder. Getting out of bed, getting off the toilet, moving around your house, try the test. 5 times, no hands. If you can do it, excellent. If you struggle or can't complete it, that's a clear signal that strength training needs to become a priority. Now the last test, and this one is probably the most revealing of all, but people don't want to do it, because it feels undignified. Can you get down onto the floor and then get back up without using your hands, your knees, or any furniture? I know how that sounds. Why would you need to do that? You're not a child. You don't sit on the floor. But here's why this matters. This movement requires total body integration. Strength, balance, flexibility, coordination, spatial awareness. Everything working together. And more importantly, it reveals whether you could recover from a fall. Because here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. Falls happen. Even to careful people. Even in safe environments. You trip on a rug, you miss a step, you lose your balance reaching for something. Most of the time, you catch yourself. But sometimes you end up on the floor. And if you're on the floor and you can't get back up, you're in serious trouble. You're lying there until someone finds you. Hours, sometimes longer. I saw this too many times. Someone falls at home. They're not seriously injured, nothing broken, but they can't get up. They lie there for 8 hours, 12 hours, sometimes a full day before a neighbor checks on them, and even when they're not physically injured from the fall, the time on the floor causes problems. Dehydration, pressure sores, muscle damage, pneumonia from lying still too long, psychological trauma that makes them terrified of being alone. The ability to get up from the floor is the ability to save yourself. There's something called the sitting rising test. Brazilian researchers developed it. You sit down on the floor and stand back up, and you lose points for every time you use your hands, your knees, or grab onto something. People who scored well on that test had a fraction of the mortality risk compared to people who scored poorly. Not because the test itself determines lifespan, but because it measures overall functional reserve. I knew a man named Carl. He was 78. Former accountant. Very proud, very independent. He fell in his bathroom one evening. Just lost his balance getting out of the shower. He wasn't hurt, but he couldn't get up. He tried for 20 minutes. His legs wouldn't cooperate. His arms couldn't generate enough force. He finally had to crawl to the phone and call his son. His son found him on the bathroom floor. Carl was humiliated, ashamed. He told me later he felt like his dignity had been stripped away. We worked on floor mobility, getting down to sitting, then to lying, then reversing the process. It was hard for him. Physically hard, but also emotionally hard. It forced him to confront how much strength and capability he'd lost, but he stayed with it. 3 months later, Carl could get down to the floor and back up smoothly. Not gracefully, maybe, but effectively. He told me it changed how he felt about his own safety. He wasn't afraid of falling anymore because he knew he could get back up. So try it. Find a clear space with nothing to grab onto. Get down to the floor however feels natural. Then try to stand back up without using your hands, without getting on your knees, without pulling on furniture. If you can do it, you have excellent functional strength and balance. If you can't, this is something worth working on. Not because you plan to sit on the floor, but because you need the ability to recover if you end up there. These 5 tests, they're not random. They're connected. They all measure different aspects of the same thing, your functional reserve. Your body's ability to handle the demands of daily life with something left over for unexpected challenges. When you can talk while walking, your cardiovascular system has reserve capacity. When you recover quickly from stairs, your heart and lungs are resilient. When you sense temperature accurately, your nervous system is intact. When you can stand from a chair repeatedly, your muscles are strong enough. When you can get up from the floor, everything is working together. People who maintain these abilities aren't lucky. They're not genetically gifted. They're just aware. They notice when something starts to slip, and they address it before it becomes a serious problem. I watched this pattern play out for 3 decades. 2 people, same age, similar backgrounds. One pays attention to these subtle markers. The other doesn't. 5 years later, their lives look completely different. The one who paid attention is still active, still independent, still capable. The one who didn't has lost significant function and doesn't understand how it happened so fast. It didn't happen fast. It happened gradually, while they were ignoring the early signs. You have the opportunity right now to know where you stand. Not approximately. Not based on how you feel. Based on objective measures of function. Try these 5 tests this week. All of them. And be honest about the results. If you pass all 5 easily, that's wonderful. Keep doing whatever you're doing. But don't assume you'll always pass them. Test yourself every few months. These abilities can change faster than you expect. If you struggle with any of them, that's not failure. It's information. Information you can use to make changes before small problems become big ones. Talk to your doctor about what you discover. Most physicians would rather help you prevent decline than treat the consequences of it later. And if testing yourself reveals problems, don't panic. Almost everything I've mentioned can be improved with appropriate intervention. Cardiovascular function responds to gentle, consistent exercise. Temperature sensing problems often have treatable underlying causes. Leg strength can be rebuilt with simple resistance exercises. Floor mobility improves with practice. You're not stuck with your current level of function. You can get better. But only if you first know where you actually are. These 5 tests give you that knowledge. They cut through the stories we tell ourselves about how we're doing and show us the reality. Because here's what I learned in 32 years of nursing. The people who aged well weren't the ones who never had problems. They were the ones who caught problems early and did something about them. They were honest with themselves. They tested their capabilities. They noticed when things changed. And they responded. That's not complicated. But it requires willingness to look at yourself clearly. Your body is talking to you all the time. These tests are just a way of listening more carefully to what it's saying. Most people over 70 don't do this. They avoid testing themselves because they're afraid of what they might discover. And then they're surprised when a crisis reveals how much they've lost. You can do this differently. You can catch changes early. You can maintain your independence longer than you might think possible. but it starts with being willing to test yourself honestly. 5 simple tests. They'll tell you more about your real health status than almost anything else, so try them. This week, and then decide what to do with what you learned. Your future self will thank you for paying attention now.